to reiterate Lisa's thank you for joining me bright early on a Friday morning. You know, a couple of years ago, I was at a conference just like this one, but I hope yours was better than mine did. Because on that third morning, I woke up on the cold bathroom floor of my hotel room. My head was thumping, my heart was pounding, I had no idea how I'd gotten there, and I also had about 50 missed calls and text messages from my husband. I was in this fog where I knew something had gone wrong, clearly. I just wasn't yet sure how or why or to what extent. At the time, I was the collection resources supervisor of a mid-sized public library. What this essentially means is I was responsible for all of the digital and physical collections of the library. And so a large part of my job was negotiating with vendors, I was managing the library's budget, and I was deciding the products and services that we wanted to offer. Now, as someone who is quite tenacious when it comes to negotiating, this was the part of the job that I both loved and hated the most because I also got really nervous around new people. It didn't help that at the time, both libraries and public schools had recently come under attack. Our professionalism questioned at best, and being downright threatened, harassed, and defunded at worst. So here I was at essentially the top of my career. I had been promoted 5 times in 5 years, and this meant that I should have had it all together. And yet, I was waking up on the bathroom floor like a college student, because somehow a vendor-sponsored happy hour had turned into me blacking out. It was as if I had this double life going on, because publicly I was holding it all together, right? I was looking like success on paper, and privately I was using alcohol to cope with stress, apparently to excess. But blacking out, that wasn't me. That was not something I did. This was a fluke, a mistake, a one-off. In fact, at the time, I convinced myself that someone must have slipped something into my drink. And a part of me still wonders if that was the case. But a bigger, more honest part of me knows the truth, which is that I had simply overdone it. That night, I'd been using alcohol to loosen up, talk to strangers, and yes, to blow off steam at what, as far as I can remember, was a pretty fun party. But all of this started for me to feel more confident and sure of myself in front of new people. And yet there's nothing very impressive about waking up on a bathroom floor. So that next morning, hungover and barely able to make it through the sessions, I decided I was going to quit drinking. And I made it 18 days. And then I fell back into old habits. And old habits were not drinking until I blacked out. Old habits were occasionally having a glass of wine after work, or drinking with my friends on the weekends. In particular, I was a big fan of mimosa lunches. So this conference, this was a one-off. It wasn't my normal habit, and so it was easy for me to justify going back into what I had originally been doing. My life was fine. It was fine. Now, I tell you this story not because it's particularly unique or dramatic, but because it's common. That's not to say that most people black out at work conferences. I hope for your sake that you haven't. But I wonder if you've ever had a couple glasses of wine only to wake up feeling groggy, anxious, or maybe just a little bit guilty. I wonder if you've ever had a drink at the end of the day to unwind, not because you were thirsty, but because it felt the only way to really relax. This experience for me was a turning point. It was my wake-up call. But it was not the moment that I quit drinking, and it was not the end of my story. I had to sit with that discomfort for a while and really dig deep into why I felt like I needed alcohol to talk to strangers. Why it felt like I was unwinding, but really I was numbing something so much deeper. I want to invite you into this process with me today. We're going to start by looking at something that most of us don't talk about openly, and that's our relationship with alcohol. Whether it's a glass of wine to relax at the end of the day, or a few drinks at a work event, alcohol tends to show up in our lives in subtle, socially acceptable ways that we rarely stop and ask ourselves why. We're going to dig deep into how alcohol sneaks its way into our coping mechanisms, and we're going to explore why it feels like an easy fix for stress for high achievers like you and me. And then we're going to dive into the impact on our bodies, our stress levels, and even our professional lives, and how alcohol sneaks in with ways we don't even notice or expect until it's too late. Along the way, I'm going to challenge you to rethink everything you think you know about alcohol. And finally, we're going to end with some practical strategies to handle stress without alcohol and some time for questions. So by the end of our time together, you're going to have a clearer understanding of alcohol's role in your life, and hopefully you're going to feel empowered to make the choices that truly serve you both personally and professionally. So we can dive in, and this is obviously a session about coping mechanisms, so I would like you to do something for me. I want to get kind of a baseline where we're at. If you can pull out like a notepad or paper or something to write with, your notes app, something you can jot stuff down on, I would like to ask you to write down as many coping mechanisms as you can think of. So anything you can do to relax, unwind, whether or not you actually do them, just whatever you've heard of, jot down as many as you can think of. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that, and a little cheat sheet here if you need it. I think that was about 30 seconds. I'm not gonna lie, I forgot to start counting. So based on that, if you could do me a favor and just count out the number that you had, and I want to know how many people came up with more than 5 strategies. Okay, more than 10? Okay, so we have a good amount of number. My question here is then, if we know these ways to manage stress, why aren't we doing them? Why do so many of us, my past self included, reach for a drink at the end of a long day instead? Maybe you're just too tired. Maybe meditation feels like it takes too much work, or you're just too wiped out at the end of the day to go to the gym. But let's be honest, does pouring a glass of wine really take less energy than closing your eyes and breathing? So it's not that you don't know about these other strategies, it's that alcohol has become our default. It's routine, it's easy, it's familiar, it's convenient. But it goes beyond this. The reason alcohol feels like the easiest option isn't just because it's routine and familiar, it's because of the way it hijacks the brain's reward system. So, alcohol releases dopamine, which is a feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's what causes that relaxation or relief feeling. But it does so at an artificially high level, so higher than anything you're going to experience normally, like sex, food, or exercise. The problem is, this overstimulates your brain. And so it starts to turn down the effect. It starts to desensitize us to pleasure. But the brain can't do that selectively. It can't just do this for alcohol with everything else, so everything gets turned down. So while deep breathing or going for a walk may be more effective for relieving our stress in the long term, your brain is looking for what's the most efficient. And that easy, very high dose of dopamine is what it's going to start craving. So it's harder for us to choose healthier coping mechanisms even when we know that they're better for us. Now, here's where I want to challenge you to consider whether you might, just a tiny bit, be dependent on alcohol. Now, before you storm out of here and get your defenses up, I don't want to imply that I'm calling you an alcoholic. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. I get it. You're not drinking every day. You're not waking up hungover on a regular basis. And as leaders, you're certainly not what fits the stereotype of what we think of when we think of addiction. So why am I even talking about dependence? Because even if you've never blacked out like I did, even if your drinking is in moderation, you have been conditioned, we've all been conditioned to rely on alcohol in subtle, sneaky ways. And that's what I want to look at today, because the reality is most of us have some dependence on alcohol. Now, maybe you're like I was and just reaching for a glass of wine at the end of the day, or maybe you really only drink at events, like parties, weddings, networking events, that sort of thing. This is all harmless, right? But alcohol isn't actually harmless. In fact, more and more studies, more and more studies are coming out every single day saying that there is no safe level of alcohol. So if you could really easily take it or leave it, why don't we leave it? Why do we feel the need to justify it by saying, you don't really drink all that much? So when I'm talking about dependence here, what I'm really talking about are the moments that we use alcohol to fill a gap. When we rely on alcohol for something more than just the taste, which I would argue is pretty much always the case. It's not only the taste, there's some other effect that we're hoping to achieve. Maybe it's after a long day, you've been dealing with students, colleagues, parents, budget meetings, whatever that looks like for you. You survived the day, you didn't kill anyone, and you think, okay, I've earned this. So we're positioning alcohol as a reward, but is it really? Does it make you feel stronger, more rested, and more capable the next day? We can take this a step further. Beyond stress relief, alcohol plays a role in our need for connection and belonging. Oh, this is justifiable. Alcohol plays a role in our need for connection and belonging. As women in leadership roles, we are expected to perform at high levels, hold it all together, and appear strong. That's a lot of pressure, and we're often doing it in situations where alcohol serves as a social networking events, dinners, happy hours, that sort of thing. Alcohol is just part of that culture. And fitting in is easier with a drink in your hand. Because you don't want to be the one that skips out and has to answer all night long, why are you drinking? The question has a lot of judgment, and so I just go along with it. Now here's the tricky part. Society reinforces this. We've been told it's normal to have a glass of wine at the end of a hard day. We've been normalizing alcohol as part of self-care. It's a reward for making it through a chaotic day. Just think about how we frame drinking in our culture. It's not a beverage, it's a lifestyle. The kind of lifestyle that the alcohol industry spends billions of dollars to perpetuate. In fact, the alcohol industry started targeting women specifically, in particular moms, in their marketing by positioning alcohol as this reward for surviving the day. I'm sure you've seen the memes, and these might look like they were created by your really clever friend, but a lot of them are actually the result of a targeted campaign to attract a previously under-tapped market, women. The alcohol industry started releasing pastel drinks with fruity flavors and lower calories, and they started slapping pink ribbons on wine bottles, which is quite ironic as we'll get to later. Their ads got more clever. The ads directed at men's power and sex, and those aimed at women sold sophistication, empowerment, and friendship. Because we're told that drinking is part of being a modern, independent woman. The alcohol industry has basically just copied the tobacco industry's playbook. So they started comparing our ability to smoke or drink like a man to the women's liberation movement. And yes, you can probably tell that these ads are a bit old, but the trends haven't changed. Just last year, Jameson released an advertisement featuring Regina Hall as this powerful boss, and she has these two male assistants working for her, right? We're trying to flip that script on these stereotypical roles to say that women can be in these powerful positions too, they can drink whiskey like a man. So, it hasn't really changed that much. But it's important to stop here and note that there is a difference between feeling empowered and actually being empowered. When I started looking at my own drinking, I realized I wasn't choosing alcohol because I wanted it. I was choosing it because I felt like I needed it. I needed it to fit in, to cope, to deal with stress. Because that's what society had been telling me. And I'm guessing if you're really honest with yourself, you might start seeing that in you too. Okay, so we talked about dependence here. I want to take a look at alcohol's impact on your health. And this part isn't to scare you, it is simply to make sure that you have the information you need to make an informed decision, whatever that looks like for you. Because when alcohol becomes any sort of habit for us, it starts sabotaging our health, and most of us don't realize the full extent. To start, alcohol is a known carcinogen. It has been since 1988. It is a group 1 carcinogen. That's the worst one, and it's at the same level as asbestos, radiation, and tobacco. Alcohol causes 7 different kinds of cancer. It's mouth and throat, esophagus, larynx, breast, stomach, pancreas, liver, and colon rectum. So basically any part of the body that alcohol touches as it works its way through your digestive system is increasing the risk of cancer. And obviously, the more you drink, the higher the risk is, but I want to be more specific because we often picture the heaviest drinkers when we think of these things. 3 drinks a week raises your risk of breast cancer by 15%. Each drink after that is another 10% on top of it. And to think, alcohol is one of the few risk factors for breast cancer that we can actually control, right? Not that easy to change your genetics or your family history, but you can control the amount that you drink. Or I guess our other option is we can slap a pink ribbon on our wine bottles and hope that scientists figure out a way to cure cancer so we don't have to change our habits. Moving on to the other effects of the body, we can take a look at the liver, since that's probably the area you're most familiar with. When we drink, alcohol is our body's filter, and so we put it under serious strain. Over time, drinking increases your risk of fatty liver disease, cirrhosis, and liver cancer, and alcohol is actually the #1 cause of liver disease in the United States. And typically when we think of these liver disease issues, we think of the heaviest drinkers, but according to the American Liver Foundation, having more than 1 drink per day for women is considered excessive use. So if you've ever ordered a second round, you're putting your liver at risk. Moving up to the heart, there is a myth out there that a little bit of wine is good for your heart, and I hate to break it to you, but the science doesn't actually support this. Alcohol raises your blood pressure, weakens your heart muscle, and increases your risk of stroke. For women in particular, this damage happens faster because of the way our bodies process alcohol compared to men. Moving up to the brain, alcohol doesn't just cloud your judgment in the moment, it has long-term effects on your brain. Alcohol damages the areas of your brain that are responsible for memory, coordination, and decision-making. And over time, this can lead to cognitive decline, memory loss, and dementia. In fact, the studies show that the more you drink, the more your brain atrophies. Alcohol literally shrinks your brain. Now, the good news, all this scary information, is that a lot of these effects can be reversed when you quit drinking, but not all of them. According to the World Health Organization, alcohol kills 2.6 million people per year worldwide. That is 2 million more per year than all of the other drugs, including fentanyl and other opioids. Now, of this 2.6 million, about 2 million are from the diseases we talked about, so liver disease, heart disease, cancer, and another 700,000 or so are from accidents and injuries, primarily car accidents. 2.6 million per year. So I've been speaking to you for somewhere around 20 minutes, but I'm going to use 20 minutes because math is easier that way. If you are Broadway fans, you'll know that there are 525,600 minutes in a year. I didn't say that for you, it's true. What that means is it's 5 people every minute. So since I've been talking to you, it's 100 lives lost. And by the end of this session today, there will be an additional 275 lives lost for alcohol. Now, the effect on our health isn't just physical, it's our mental health too. Initially, alcohol quiets the noise, it numbs our anxiety, and it gives us that relaxed feeling. But, of course, it worsens these conditions in the long run. It interferes with the brain's balance of neurotransmitters, specifically serotonin, deplete serotonin levels, which leading antidepressants raise serotonin because it leads to depression. Irony is that we often reach for a drink to manage our anxiety and depression. That's just fueling it. So I'm sure you've heard that alcohol itself is a depressant, and it might lift your mood initially, if it's happy hour on a Friday and you're finished with work for the week, but it ultimately lowers your baseline emotional state. So if you've ever woken up after the night of drinking, you're feeling just kind of a bit down or funky, this is why. And regular drinking can lead to persistent depressive symptoms as your brain becomes less capable of producing the chemicals it needs to make you feel happy and motivated. It also messes with your sleep. So many people think that alcohol helps them sleep, and it may actually knock you out. It disrupts the quality of your sleep. Specifically by interrupting your REM sleep, it gives you about half as many as you normally have. And REM is crucial for cognitive functioning and emotional health. And according to the Sleep Foundation, less than 1 standard drink for women reduces your sleep quality by 9.3%. And over time, this poor sleep quality compounds issues like anxiety, depression, and stress. Okay, Marcy, we get it. It's terrible for our health. But so is stress, right? Stress kills people too. So I want to take a look at how alcohol and stress interact. Probably initially, if you've ever had a drink to relax, you felt that initial calming feeling, right? Your brain slows down a little bit, your shoulders fall away from your ears, and life feels a little bit more manageable. This is where alcohol tricks you, because it's not resolving your stress. The very best, it's pausing it. When you drink, alcohol slows down your central nervous system, which is what gives you that relaxed feeling. But your body craves balance, and so it starts to counteract this by releasing stress hormones, particularly adrenaline and cortisol. You may not notice that adrenaline surge afterwards, but it's because of how our body breaks down this drug. We digest it, which is the slowest way that it processes the drug. It would be a lot faster if you were to inhale or reject it. So you might not have felt that adrenaline surge, but I wonder if you've ever woken up in the middle of the night, around 3 or 4 in the morning, your head is thumping, your heart's kind of pounding, you get this jittery, anxious feeling, you're wide awake and quite possibly beating yourself up for something you did the day before. That's the adrenaline surge. And this disrupts your sleep, leaving you feeling exhausted and irritable the next day. Moving on to cortisol, we can think of cortisol as the body's internal alarm system. It's what starts that fight or flight response. It helps you spring into action when your body senses danger. Now, this is great if you have to outrun a bear or need a tight deadline at work, but alcohol causes this release even when there is no real danger. So over time, alcohol increases your baseline level of cortisol. So even when you're not drinking, your body's baseline level of cortisol is higher, which means you're more sensitive to stress. So even the smallest problems start to feel overwhelming because your stress response is heightened. When your cortisol levels are chronically elevated, which they are when you drink regularly, it leads to this vicious cycle where the more stressed we are, the more we want to drink, the more we drink, the more stressed we are because it adds that cortisol in our body. And over time, chronic stress can lead to all kinds of health problems like weight gain, high blood pressure, heart disease, immune system suppression, all of which are stressors in and of themselves. And yet, very few people recognize this connection between alcohol and stress. In fact, I was convinced alcohol was helping my stress. Before I went into public libraries, I was working at a Big 4 accounting firm, and we would work 80 hours a week easy every week. And occasionally, I would come home and have a glass of wine to just kind of decompress from that. And over time, my anxiety got so bad that I would want to crawl under my desk. I couldn't check emails or answer the phone or text messages. I would actually have to get my husband to screen these things for me sometimes because I was just too overwhelmed with the unknown on the other side, always expecting the worst. This actually ended up with a stay in a burnout ward at the hospital. So the alcohol really reduced our stress. Wouldn't the more we drink mean the less stressed we are? Wouldn't over time we become less stressed overall because we're drinking more? This certainly wasn't the case for me, and I bet it wasn't the case for you either. And I can tell you, having quit drinking on January 1st, 2023, that my anxiety levels have never been lower without medication. Now, that's not to say I never feel stressed. If you sit next to me on an airplane, you're going to notice that I am gripping the armrest at the takeoff and landing, but it's not as bad. It's not anywhere near where it used to be because I'm not adding fuel to the fire anymore. And again, you don't have to be a heavy drinker for these effects to build up. According to the Cleveland Clinic, it takes about, come on buddy, I'm good. Nope. Okay, it takes about 25 hours for your body to process one standard drink. So that's 1 ounce, 1 ounce of liquor, 5 ounces of wine, or 12 ounces of beer. So if you've ever had 2 drinks in one night, that means your body is processing the alcohol for more than 2 full days afterwards. So you can start to see that if you binge just 1 night a week, meaning 3 drinks for women, your body is constantly trying to counteract that damage. Here's another critical point. Alcohol doesn't just increase our stress biologically. It also prevents us from taking actions on the things that are actually causing our stress in the first place. And so this is where we start to talk about coping. To cope means to deal effectively or successfully, but that's not our intention when we drink. We don't drink in order to solve our problems. We drink to unwind, to decompress, to shut off on challenges of the day. So what we're really doing is postponing our stress, not coping with or solving it. In this way, Alcohol offers a temporary escape from reality by encouraging avoidance. Rather than dealing with the sources of our stress, whether that's having a tough conversation at work, financial pressures, personal issues, what have you, we're putting them on hold. Because alcohol allows us to dull our awareness to these problems, and get easier to shift them aside for a few hours. And then when you sober up, those stressors are still there, and now you have the added stress of knowing you didn't do anything about them. Over time, this avoidance leads to bigger problems. That conversation that was hard to have, it's going to get a bit harder. Those financial stressors, they become more pressing. We are numbing that short-term discomfort by increasing our long-term stress. Because when we don't take action on the things that stress us out, we feel more anxious and overwhelmed. Those tasks that we're not dealing with, they start to pile up, and that mental load just gets heavier. So this creates a cycle where the more we avoid, the more stressed we become. Alcohol also impairs our cognitive function, particularly your ability to think clearly and solve problems. So after drinking, you're not operating at your best, which makes it harder to tackle those stressors in any sort of effective way. So not only are you not very motivated to actually handle the problems, if you even do decide to take steps on those actions, they're not going to be your best thought out plans because your prefrontal cortex is checked out for the evening. Now, in addition to avoiding those stressful situations, one of the reasons that we drink is to avoid stressful emotions. But emotional avoidance comes with a cost too. When we drink to avoid stress, anxiety, sadness, we're not just postponing those feelings, we're robbing ourselves of the opportunity to process them in a healthy way. You can think of your emotions like a beach ball that you're trying to hold underwater. So to hold it down, it takes effort, and at first it's going to seem manageable, but eventually that ball is going to shoot up and it's probably going to knock you off your feet. This is what happens when we drink to suppress our emotions. We push them down with those drinks, thinking that we're controlling them, but all we're doing is delaying the inevitable. That ball is going to surface, most likely at most inopportune times. Our emotions are there for a reason, even the hard ones. They're signals telling us that something is wrong in our lives. We can think of them, there we go, like the check engine light in your car. No one likes seeing that light. It's not pleasant. And drinking is like taking a little piece of black tape and just covering it up, right? Problem solved. But whatever that issue is, triggering that light is still there. Dealing with those emotions, processing them, is taking that car to the mechanic. That's going to be inconvenient, it's going to be expensive. But it's not going to be nearly as inconvenient and expensive as if we ignore that problem and eventually that car breaks down on the side of the road. Stress is that check engine light, and it's a signal telling us that something is out of balance. Maybe we're taking on too much, maybe we need healthier boundaries, or maybe there's something in our life that needs to change. When we ignore these signals by drinking, we miss the chance to address the root cause of that stress before it gets worse. Drinking provides a temporary relief from those feelings, but it doesn't make them go away. It often just makes them worse because the stressor is still there, and now we've added guilt or frustration from knowing that we didn't resolve it. So this creates a backlog of unresolved emotions, which can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical symptoms manifesting in the body. The only way to truly handle difficult emotions is to allow them and to move through them. And even if you're not trying to actively suppress your emotions, research shows that regular alcohol consumption alters the brain's abilities to regulate your emotions yourself. It does this by primarily damaging the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation, as well as the amygdala, which plays a key role in processing primal emotions like fear and anger. So what does this look like in real life? Okay. It looks like overreacting to small things because your emotional baseline is off. It looks like breaking down over situations that wouldn't normally trigger such a strong reaction. And it looks like constantly chasing a drink to calm yourself down because your brain is no longer able to do it on its own. When you choose to deal with your emotions rather than drink them away, you're building resilience. Resilience isn't built through avoidance, it's built through practice. It's from facing difficult situations, learning from them, and then coming out stronger on the other side. In this way, you learn that you can handle life's challenges without alcohol. And the more you do this, the more confident you become in your ability to face whatever comes your way. So, given all of this, why do we drink? Well, for one thing, how many of you knew that alcohol causes 7 different kinds of cancer? I sure didn't, and it's not something that the general public is typically aware of. And I think that's because on our warning labels, you essentially get 3 warnings. Don't drink when you're pregnant, don't operate heavy machinery, and may cause health problems. It's this may cause health problems that really riles me up, because alcohol has been a known carcinogen literally my entire life and kills 2.6 million people a year. And it's because the alcohol industry is pretty strong. They can get away with this. They spend $7 to $8 billion a year on advertising, twice as much as Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola doesn't have an age limit on their audience. And they also contribute about $70 billion in tax revenue in the US per year, about 7 times more than for cigarettes. And yet for cigarettes, remember, also a group 1 carcinogen, we get all kinds of warnings. They're very specific about the problems that happen from smoking, and they put that on their labels. You get pictures of blackened lungs and fuzzy tongues in school. And the cigarette companies have to make public disclosures about the adverse effects of smoking and how addictive nicotine is. Because the people stood up and took action. This hasn't been the case for alcohol yet, and I think there are a couple of reasons for this. The first is it can be hard to go against the grain. We are social creatures by nature. It is literally wired into our system for survival, and so fitting in is really important. If everyone around you is drinking, it's really hard to go against that. Number 2 is that our society has decided to blame the person and not the drug, but only in the case of alcohol. So we don't call people who smoke cigarette-aholics, we do call drinkers alcoholics. And yet in both of those situations, the person is addicted to an addictive substance that at least is or was heavily marketed to them. And in one situation, we warn people never to start smoking. It's very addictive, never to start. And in the other, we wonder why the person can't drink responsibly. But alcohol is a drug. We've given it this separate class in our lexicon, drugs and alcohol, but alcohol is a drug. A drug is something that changes our bodily state, and that's exactly what alcohol does. It's the reason we drink it, right? If it didn't change our state, we would just have tea or juice. There'd be no reason. It's just that it's a socially accepted drug, just like cigarettes were back in the day. And yet now we ban people a certain number of meters away from the door so we don't have to be exposed to their smoke. And we banish other drug users to prison. The third thing at play here, I think, are those clickbait headlines telling you that alcohol is safe in moderation. It's important to note that a lot of these studies are funded directly or indirectly by the alcohol industry. In fact, there was a meta-study published in the European Journal of Public Health, and they compiled 13,481 studies referencing alcohol. And of those, over 11,000, so 81%, were either authored directly by or supported, that means funded, by the alcohol industry. So it's no wonder we hear so much more about the benefits of drinking than we do about the risks. I think when we start to consider that medium behind the message, that's when we may start to look at alcohol the same way we do cigarettes. Okay, before I go any further, I want to stop and say, I truly don't care. I really don't. I'm not here to tell you that you should or shouldn't drink. I don't care if you leave this session and go grab a drink. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to make sure that you have the information that I didn't. The information that the alcohol industry spends billions of dollars to keep from you. Because regardless of how you feel about alcohol, I am sure you'll be with me in this, that knowledge is power. That it's essential for a true democracy, and that it's what shapes the future of our country. And so, if I can make people aware of the consequences of drinking, and then they still don't decide to drink, that is absolutely their prerogative. I mean, we all take risks every single day. In fact, I'm warned of all the risks every time I walk into my hotel room, telling me about all the chemicals that they use that could kill me. I don't know. But I do it anyway, right? Because I want a place to stay. As another example, for my 30th birthday, I decided to jump out of a teeny little airplane. And before I did so, I had to sign a 14-page contract that listed all the ways that this can go terribly wrong. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm a licensed attorney in Texas. And so I read all 14 pages. I can tell you, it wasn't pretty, and it went into a lot of detail. And even still, I got on that teeny little airplane, and I jumped out on purpose. I knew the risks, and I did it anyway. Similarly, we all know fast food isn't very good for us. Those oils are going to clog our arteries, and at a very bare minimum, they're going to be a lot more calorie dense than if we just stayed home and had fruits and vegetables. And yet sometimes we find ourselves sliding into that in and out line. We know the risks, and we make an informed choice. In fact, a lot of governments have taken it upon themselves to make sure that we are very informed by requiring companies to post the nutritional information on their menus. Sometimes we wish we didn't know these things, but at the same time, by being given the opportunity to make a fully informed, conscious decision, we're more in control of our futures. Our present self may not want to know that there are like 9,000 calories in that slice of cheesecake, but our future selves will thank us for understanding the consequences of our actions and hopefully making the choices that are going to lead us to the best chance of survival. So, it's not for me to have convinced you today that alcohol is the enemy, or even that it's not the best option for you to deal with your stress. But if you are inclined to take a different path, I want to make sure you're set up for success. So, to do that, we're going to look at the psychology behind alcohol as a coping mechanism. Specifically, how our expectations and beliefs play a major role in why we drink. This is where the TFR cycle comes into play. This cycle explains how our thoughts create our feelings, which influence our actions, which determine the results that we experience. We start with our thoughts. The way we think about alcohol shapes our entire relationship with it. For many of us, we have all sorts of ingrained beliefs about alcohol that obviously it helps us relax, to socialize, have fun, celebrate, etc. And these beliefs drive our behavior. If we believe alcohol is the only way to unwind or is the best way to unwind, that thought creates a feeling of dependency on it. So those thoughts lead to our feelings of relief, comfort, even anticipation at the thought of a drink. But those same thoughts can create feelings of anxiety if we try to imagine a stressful situation or a social event without alcohol. If we believe alcohol helps us have more fun or relax, then if we don't have access to alcohol, we're going to feel anxious or deprived, which reinforces the belief that we need it. Based on those thoughts and feelings, we take action. If we believe alcohol is the best way to cope, then the next time we're stressed, we're going to reach for that glass of wine. And the more we do this, the more this action becomes ingrained, and drinking becomes our go-to response, our habit, whenever we get those feelings of stress and anxiety. And then what's the result? Well, over time, we reinforce the belief that we need alcohol to cope, which keeps us trapped in this TFR cycle. We get that short-term relief that we were looking for, but we also get those long-term consequences. Worsening anxiety, increased stress, health issues, and growing dependence on alcohol. So take a moment to think back to the last time that you had a drink, or the thoughts that were going through your head right before you ordered or poured that drink. Maybe there was something along the lines of, I've had a hard day, I deserve this, or I just need to loosen up. These thoughts led to your feelings of relief, anticipation, maybe even excitement. And those feelings drove you to take action. You poured the drink. The result is you reinforce that alcohol is the solution. This is the TFR cycle at work. And the science supports this. Research shows that people who expect alcohol to make them feel more sociable, more relaxed, more uninhibited, frequently experience these effects regardless of how much alcohol they consumed. In one study, they gave participants non-alcoholic drinks that they were told were alcohol, and these people started acting intoxicated. They were extroverted and overly aggressive simply because they believed they were drinking. This phenomenon is what's known as the self-fulfilling prophecy, that our beliefs create this mental framework that then guides how we act. If you go to a social situation and you're expecting alcohol to ease your anxiety or make you feel more confident, your brain is going to respond accordingly. In fact, these expectations can be so strong that they can have more powerful effects than the drug themselves. This is seen in everything from lowered inhibitions to engaging in riskier behavior, depending on how you expect alcohol to make you feel. So you might have felt more relaxed after a drink, but I wonder, is it really the alcohol? Or is it simply because you expected it to make you feel more relaxed? This brings us to the inner conflict many of us feel when it comes to alcohol. Even when we know it's impacting us negatively, we continue to justify and rationalize that behavior. And this internal battle is called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance occurs when our actions contradict our beliefs and values. This creates an uncomfortable tension, and for example, we might not have known all of these statistics about how alcohol affects our health, but we generally know it's not the healthiest choice. And so when we drink anyway, we justify it with thoughts like, I deserve this, or it's just one drink. We rationalize our behavior to align with what we want to believe, which is that alcohol is really a problem for us. This tug of war between what we know and how we act often leads us to downplay the risks and ignore the consequences of drinking. And this discomfort makes it really hard to change. Our minds want consistency, and so we either have to adjust our behavior or change our beliefs in order to reduce that tension. And unfortunately, the easier option is just to keep drinking because it avoids that difficult work of confronting the real issue. And so we rationalize our behavior. But understanding cognitive dissonance can also empower you to make better decisions. Once you realize the discomfort is just your brain trying to reconcile two conflicting thoughts, you can consciously choose to reframe your thoughts in order to align with your values. If you want to live a healthier, more empowered life, acknowledging and resolving that dissonance is the key to taking lasting changes in your relationship with alcohol. And we do this by using that same T-bar cycle to our advantage. We start by identifying the beliefs and thoughts that we have about alcohol. The most common ones I see are obviously alcohol helps me relax, helps me socialize, have more fun, make things less boring, etc. We then take each of those beliefs and start to examine them. Is this belief true? Does the science actually support this belief? Or does the science actually show the opposite, like in the case with alcohol and stress? What does this belief say about me? Do I really need alcohol to relax? What if there were other, more effective ways for me to unwind at the end of the day? What if socializing didn't require a drink, it was just a skill that I could develop with time and practice? When you start to challenge these beliefs, you then begin to create space for new thoughts and therefore new behaviors. And when you shift your thoughts, your feelings naturally shift as well. Instead of feeling anxious at the thought of attending a social situation without a drink, you might start to feel empowered by the idea of showing up fully in control and in power. Instead of believing you need a drink to relax, you might start to feel curious about other ways to unwind, ways that leave you feeling truly restored rather than groggy and depleted the next morning. And this shift in feelings leads to new actions. When you stop believing alcohol is the only option, you find yourself more open to trying different coping mechanisms, whether that's taking a walk, journaling, calling a friend, whatever. These actions don't just give you short-term relief, they help you build long-term resilience to stress. And the more you practice these healthy alternatives, the more they become a new habit, placing alcohol as the default. And then here's where the real magic happens. As you take different actions, like choosing healthier ways to cope, you get to experience new results. Sleep better, feel less anxious, handle stress more effectively, and start to feel genuinely proud of the way that you're managing your life. You begin to break that cycle of dependence and see that you are more than capable of handling whatever life throws at you without alcohol. This is how you take back control. It's about recognizing that your thoughts drive your actions, and that by changing your thoughts about alcohol, you can change your entire relationship with it. You can step out of autopilot and start making conscious choices that truly support your well-being overall. This is where true empowerment lies. It's not in drinking to fit in or to cope. It's not about avoiding health issues or breaking dependence. It's about fully taking back your power. It's in reclaiming your own ability to handle stress, to relax, to feel confident without needing a drink. It's stepping fully into your role as a leader, as someone who is in control of her life, her choices, and her future. When I quit drinking, I thought I was going to miss out. I thought I'd be less fun, less relaxed, less funny, less. But what I found was the opposite. I became more of the person that I truly am. I was sharper, more focused, and more present. My relationships deepened because I was no longer just mentally checking out. And I became more of the leader that I wanted to be because I was no longer using alcohol as a crutch. Empowerment comes when you realize that you don't need alcohol to unwind. It's in learning that you can handle whatever life is going to throw your way without needing to know yourself first. It's in realizing that alcohol doesn't make you better, it makes you smaller. It shrinks your ability to face challenges head on and to truly engage with your own life. You don't need it to fit in or to cope. You are more than capable of handling stress, pressure, life's challenges without it. And this isn't about perfection. It's not about never feeling stressed again or even never drinking again. It's about knowing that you can handle those feelings without relying on alcohol to get you through. So the next time you find yourself reaching for that glass of wine, ask yourself, is this what I really need? Or is there something better, more nourishing that I could choose instead? Because you deserve more than a temporary escape. You deserve real relief, real peace, real strength. And it's all waiting for you on that other side of the bottle. And should you choose to go alcohol-free, you get to experience the incredible ripple effect. One of the most powerful things about quitting alcohol is how it impacts every area of your life. So yes, it's going to change your relationship with stress, but it's also going to ripple out into your health, your work, your relationships, and even your sense of self. In your health, quitting alcohol leads to more than just avoiding cancer and liver damage. You sleep better, wake up with more energy, and your mental clarity skyrockets. That foggy feeling that you've been attributing to long hours and stress, it lifts. Your body finally gets the chance to rest and recover without constantly trying to counteract the damage of alcohol. In your work, you're sharper. You make better decisions because you're thinking clearly, not dragging yourself through a hangover or sluggishly trying to process information. You're more focused, more creative, and more engaged. And when you're leading others, that clarity and confidence trickle down. Your team feels it. They see a leader who is fully present, fully capable, and operating at our highest level. In your relationship, quitting alcohol brings you depth. You're no longer numbing yourself or checking out emotionally. You're there, really there for the people you care about, whether that's your partner, your kids, your colleagues, your friends. They get more of you, and so the connections there grow stronger. Alcohol, it disconnects us. It pulls us away from others and from ourselves. Ditching alcohol is what brings us back. But to fully experience these changes, we have to rewrite the story we've been told about alcohol. For so long, we've been told that alcohol is part of the good life. It's relax, celebrate, bond. But it's time to rewrite that narrative. Because alcohol isn't a solution, it's a distraction. It keeps us from being the fullest, most powerful versions of ourselves. So if you think about those times you reached for a drink, how many times was it because you were tired, stressed, or just needed to unwind? How many times was it because you were at a social event and drinking just felt like what you were supposed to do? And now think about what it would feel like to show up to those events without a drink. What would it feel like to come home after a long day and genuinely unwind in a way that actually restores you? What would it feel like to show up to a party or a networking event and be fully confident, fully yourself without needing a glass of liquid courage to loosen up? This is the narrative that I would love for you to experience. It's one where alcohol doesn't play any role in your identity or in your coping strategies. One where you trust yourself to handle life without it, because that is empowerment. That's true strength, and it's available to every single one of you. So we have talked all about the why for here, and now to dive into the how. You don't need alcohol to relax, connect with others, or cope. You have the ability to cultivate healthier, more empowering habits that not only help you unwind in the moment, but support your overall well-being in the long term. So then, how do we unwind without wine? I'm going to give you some practical strategies today, and I'm going to be honest with you, these aren't going to shock you. They're probably right there in your notebooks. And that's because these things get tossed around so much because they actually work, unlike alcohol. So to unwind without wine, you might start by creating a relaxing evening routine. For many people, drinking is tied to the end of the day. It's a way to shift from work mode into home mode. And if you're familiar with the books, The Power of Habit or Atomic Habits, you know our habits start with a cue. And coming home from work or shutting off that laptop if we work from home is a powerful cue that we repeat for 2/3 of the year, every single year. So what if you created a different kind of ritual to kind of cue that end of the day for you? You might start by replacing your favorite alcoholic beverage with a cup of tea. A cup of tea is naturally soothing, and it doesn't really matter what kind of tea you pick. green, black, lavender, they've all been studied and shown to reduce cortisol levels by up to 50%. Even better, tea is one of the cheapest beverages out there next to water. Or you might spend a few minutes each evening practicing some deep breathing or mindfulness. You simply close your eyes and focus on your breath. This activates the relaxation response, which is what interrupts that fight or flight response. In particular, the 4-7-8 breathing technique has been shown to be more effective than just general deep breathing. It's very simple. You breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, and release for a count of 8. But regardless of the method you choose, deep focused breathing, in addition to reducing our anxiety, has been shown to lower blood pressure, help you fall asleep, experience less pain, tension, anger, and depression, and even perform better on attention tests. Or you might want to pick up a new hobby, something like reading, knitting, or working on a puzzle. Anything that requires focus that isn't too stressful, so essentially something that gets you into a state of flow. Flow activates that dopamine reward system. Also, the default mode network, which is a network of brain regions in your brain that's active when you're daydreaming or thinking about the past or present or reflecting on your experiences. This network is what's active when we're thinking about ourselves, when we're worrying, when we're beating ourselves up for that stupid thing we wish we hadn't said. When we're in flow, that network calms down and we stop thinking about ourselves and start focusing on the external task at hand. Up next, moving your body. So, exercise is one of the most effective ways to relieve stress and improve your mood. It's actually been shown to be a better antidepressant than both cognitive behavioral therapy and the leading antidepressants out there on the market. And it doesn't have to be an intense workout. A short walk or some gentle yoga can really help you unwind. And that's because when you exercise, your body releases endorphins, and endorphins are mood boosters. They make you happy. It also helps burn off that built-up adrenaline and cortisol in your body that builds just from the day and also from drinking. You know it, I know it, Elle Woods knows it. Exercise works. But if you don't feel like lacing up your tennis shoes, you might try laughing. Dr. William Fry at Stanford refers to laughing as internal jogging. And that's because 20 seconds of laughing is the equivalent of 3 minutes of hard rowing in terms of what it does to our heart rate. Laughing also creates a complete stress cycle, so it ramps us up and then it cools us down, leaving us feeling relaxed. Finally, connection. Connection is said to be the opposite of addiction. When we're isolated, we're more likely to reach for alcohol to cope, as we saw with the skyrocketing drinking levels during the pandemic. But real connection is a powerful antidote to that. Genuine relationships reduce stress, provide emotional support, and create a sense of belonging. Studies show that feeling connected helps reduce our anxiety, build resilience, and lower our cortisol levels. Alcohol can't provide that kind of deep, meaningful support. Only true connection can. That said, social events can feel a little bit tricky when you're trying to avoid alcohol, but they don't have to be. You can still connect with others in meaningful ways without grabbing a drink. Instead of meeting your friends at a bar, you might want to suggest alcohol-free activities like going for a hike, trying out a new coffee shop, or doing something creative like painting or a cooking class. And yes, I recognize that more alcohol is leaking more and more into these events these days, but I'm sure you can get creative and find a way to connect without alcohol being the pure focus of your event. Or if you're going to be at an event where you know people are going to be drinking, bring your own mocktail or non-alcoholic drink. This allows you to feel included and gives you something to sip on without feeling that pressure to join in. When we feel truly seen and heard by others, that's when our need for unhealthy coping mechanisms, like alcohol, starts to fade away. So, as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with this thought. Choosing to unwind without wine isn't about deprivation, it's about liberation. It's about stepping into your power as a woman, as a leader, and as someone who knows her worth. The decision to step away from alcohol is the decision to step towards your most authentic, powerful self. It's the decision to face life head on with clarity, confidence, and resilience. It's the decision to stop numbing and start living fully. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this path isn't always easy. There are going to be moments of discomfort, moments where old habits start calling your name, but I can promise you that every time you choose something other than alcohol, every time you choose to take care of yourself in a way that actually nourishes your body and mind, you're reclaiming your power. So tonight, when you're tempted to order that glass of wine, ask yourself, is this really what I need? Or is there something else that I can choose? Something that supports me, nourishes me, and honors my values? Because here's the truth. You're stronger than you think. You're more capable than you know, and you don't need alcohol for anything. Thank you. We have about 15 minutes for questions. I have a 7-day mindfulness challenge if you want to join that. And I also just have an Instagram because I just like connecting with people. But if you have any questions for me, I'm here, otherwise we'll just hang out for 15 minutes.
Question. They have those apps like Reframing.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's a ton of different ones.
Yeah.
What's your experience with that? And would you recommend it?
I haven't used Reframe. I'm very familiar with it because they do a lot of the statistics on alcohol use. I think it's really helpful. I used one called, I think it's called I Am Sober. The point was that it tracks the number of days that you've gone without drinking, and that can be really powerful because it'll connect you with people that are at that same level. And so you're not talking to someone who's been alcohol-free for a couple of years and been alcohol-free for a bunch of hours. You can start to have similar problems and issues, and it kind of trends that way. So I think they can be really helpful. It also builds that connection, right? You're with someone who's also trying to make the same healthy choices that you are, and so you get to lean on each other for support, especially if the people around you aren't inclined to make that same decision. But I will say that with that ripple effect, people start to see how great you feel, how much energized you are, how much clearer your skin is, and they start to follow in your lead. It's been my general experience.